Everyone, so I'm going to have a go today at another autumn object, which is an acorn. So what I've done is I've drawn this out, thinking about the direction of the light. I'm putting the arrow coming this way so that I've got the shadow. When you're drawing out, you're getting this eclipse egg type shape, but then you're going to curve these around. So that comes to the cap of the acorn and then the little stem. And then I've just drawn out the shadow underneath. So this is part of my beginner series. So you can copy the drawing. I'm using a piece of Saunders Waterford, which is 5 by 7 inches, a Cotman palette, which is linked in the description, and 3 brushes. So I've got a round number 10, a round number 6 and a rigger. And it's all about using the colours that you have. If you don't have the same colours as me, I want you to use the closest to those. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is get a little bit of a base on. I want some background colour on here. So I'm going to wet the whole thing. So this is with my round number 10. I want a nice even sheen, so no dull bits, no puddles, nice even sheen. You can see that on the paper. And then I'm going to come into some cadmium yellow, so this is going to give us a nice glow in this background. It doesn't matter if we go over the acorn. In fact, what it does do is give a bit of atmosphere. When you're building up these layers, it works really well. Give a bit of atmosphere. So I'm just stroking this through at a diagonal. I'm going to pick up a little bit of rose and bring that through. And then I'm going to go a little bit of burnt sienna. So I'm keeping it quite autumnal. And the burnt sienna is going to come into the acorn as well anyway. So this is all about creating a bit of atmosphere in the background. I'm not even thinking about the acorn at this stage, just atmosphere. Okay, I'm going to dry that off. Okay, so that's nicely dry. And what we're going to do now is come on to the acorn nut itself. So I'm wetting that and I'm on to my round number 6 now. I'm going to come into burnt sienna, the perfect colour. Just using my number 6, I'm going to come around the edges and I'm doing some nice directional strokes. I'm starting to build those little lines you get on acorns. If you want a photo reference, then you just go online and Google acorns. You'll see that there's plenty to look at. Or you can go and pick some. So you can see those directional lines appearing, and then I'm going to come into some burnt umber. So you basically want a nice dark brown. If you haven't got burnt umber, sepia would work, or you could use a mixture of ultramarine and burnt sienna. In most kits you have one of those within there. I'm going to come first of all into this edge because I want this to be nice and dark. Thinking the direction of the light, it's going to be dark along this edge as well. You often get a darker bit just on there as well. So I'm just going to pop that on. And I'm going to rinse the brush, dab it off on the kitchen towel, and then I'm going to stroke this slip through. So I want to make sure that that line is blending with the directional strokes that we've used. Rinse my brush again, dab it off, and then I want to just preserve a bit of light, so I'm going to lift out. So with this brush being nearly dry, I can lift a little bit of light just out here. If it runs back, then just wait a few seconds and try again. Sometimes it's a bit wet, and you have to do it a few times, but that's lifted quite nicely there. Okay, and then because this is wet, I'm not going to do this bit, but I will come on to the stem and pop that in for now. So I've wet that, then I'm going to come in to the burnt umber, run along, just each of these edges really. If it's a bit wet, dab off, pick up some neat colour, come back in. If you want it to look a bit darker in places, you can use a little bit of ultramarine blue. That creates a real nice darkness on that edge. Okay, I'm going to dry that one off. Okay, so that's nicely dry, so I'm going to come into this middle section now. So a little bit of water, and I'm going to use a little bit of cadmium yellow. If you had raw sienna at this point, that would work, or yellow ochre. It's just I don't have either of those colours in this palette. I use what I have. I practice what I preach, basically, which is you should use what you have. So a little bit of that cadmium yellow is coming on. And then I'm going to dab in a little bit of the burnt sienna. Now I'm going to try and get a little bit of texture on this with a bit of salt. So I'm using lots of different colours. So this is a bit of the burnt umber going in now. And I'm dabbing in to create a bit of the texture, but I want the salt to do some of it as well. I've just got normal table salt, sprinkle some into my hand. The rest of it's dry anyway, so it's not going to do any damage, but I'm just carefully sprinkling a little bit of that on. You don't need a lot. And then I'm going to let that dry, and it's going to soak out the paint. Okay, so that's dried, and I've rubbed the salt off, and I've got a lovely texture there. So I don't want to do too much more on there, because I think it's always best to go with the approach less is more. So if I come in with a little bit of the burnt sienna, in fact that's not showing well, so I'm going to use a little bit of the burnt umber. I want a little bit of a cross hatch, so I'm just going to do a little bit there, just a little bit of cross hatch on that side, and I'm actually getting smaller as I go away because I want that to help create a bit of shadow on there. So if I do a little bit of added dabbing there, that's giving me enough of the texture that shadow's working. Okay, and then I've rinsed my brush out. If I come into some burnt sienna, again, less is more. I'm going to put a little bit of detail onto this. So I'm following a directional stroke, so I'm accentuating the curve of the acorn and just painting on varied thicknesses so you don't end up with a pattern. I'm not doing too much. Then with a wet brush, I've dabbed it off once. I can just soften in some of those edges. Just like that. And it's just giving it that little bit more, but not gone over the top. Just going to soften in this top one as well. Okay, then I need a colour. A great shadow colour is purple. So I've got a bit of purple here. This is alizarin crimson and ultramarine blue. That makes a nice purple. You don't want it to be too strong if you're on a light surface. So I'm going to come in, just spread this bit around. just like that, it stops it floating. And then the other great tip is to take something nice and dark. It is the burnt umber. I'm going to pop a little bit of the ultramarine blue in the brush as well. Can you see? Then just taking it just underneath just accentuates it and gives it a little bit more lift from the shadow. Just keep it nice and fine. I'll dry that one off. Okay, so the last thing I want to show you, if I just take a bit of water there, is a glaze, and a glaze will make something pop forward and give a bit more depth. So this is just some of the burnt sienna. I'm using my round number 10, and I'm gently applying this over the top. Now I did take a tiny bit of water on where I wanted that light area to be, so that I didn't take any more depth into there. It's a really lovely way of making something bolder and stand forward without having to do too much. You have to be very careful not to lift the other layers, but it does work really nicely. Okay, I'll dry that one off and take the tape off. And there we go. So you've got a beautiful, simple acorn with several techniques there for you to practice, including that glazing and that atmospheric background. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Please do like, subscribe and share. I'll pop another video here in a playlist here, and I shall see you next time. Bye.